Good morning, good morning. So we are sorry we're running a little bit late this morning. It would seem that us and Zoom weren't having too much luck getting on the same page.
Friends this morning, us and Zoom, but that's okay. We're friends
Yes,
again now. We've made up.
yes, we're here now. We're here now. So thank you for those who have been waiting to join us live this morning. We're talking about multifaceted in a mainstream world today, which again is another big topic. But yes, very keen to dive on in. So Nicolette, when we even posed the topic, multifaceted in a mainstream society, what instantly gets generated for you?
What gets generated for me is that as we step into the new versions of ourselves and we start to dabble in the things that light us up and things that might be a bit different for us, we are reminded constantly that the world or the people around us, society, etc., expects us to show up in a certain way. So what multifaceted means to me is that you might be a high performing professional, you might be an accountant that enjoys going to festivals and dressing a bit hippie like on the weekends. Or so what multifaceted means to me is that there's all these different parts of you and it's okay that they all show up together. So for me, I'm an artist and a poet and a healer. In my professional life, that's what I do, which is kind of a bit weird. There's not that many energy healers that I know that are also artists and use their artwork to channel that energy into to help people as well. But I'm also a mum of two and stepmom of four, and runner of a household. Is that a title?
Absolutely.
There's so many different facets to me, and that's okay. That's okay that they all coexist together, even when it's not what other people are expecting.
Yeah, exactly. And then on top of that as well, also being everything to do with business. So the financial side, the business structure side, IT side. So it all intermingles, and I think we can really all relate to that. To go, there's many caps that we wear, and also giving ourselves credit for the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, and giving ourselves permission to be in the environments where those different facets actually shine in and of themselves, because it's very easy to have, say, a primary cap, and typically in today's society that is our roles, either as a professional or in our personal life, without actually looking at, well, who am I beneath that? Which then also ties into, our chat from last week as well. So what's beneath the roles that makes you multifaceted and is generating these different facets of you?
So do you mean by underneath the roles, do you mean your core value set and who you are running through everything in your life?
That's very much a big one. Values is a huge part of our core self. I guess we're going straight in. I guess for me, what this topic really highlighted when I was reflecting on my own journey was when I had recently graduated, and I had spent considerable time and energy securing my career title of psychologist. It's a minimum of 6 years study, and there's a lot of hoops that you jump through in getting to that end finish line. And I found myself in a position where there were organizational considerations that weren't marrying well with the training. And then I was undergoing some coaching at the time. And when they weren't marrying, the way the coach started to unpick things for me was, well, who are you without being a psychologist? And at that point in time, considering I had just spent 8 years embedding all of those skills and knowledge in my system, it was a very one specific question, and it was a question that I didn't have an answer to at that time. Who am I outside of this title, outside of this training? And particularly when the training starts to become merged with the self. So that question in and of itself is essentially, who am I? And then that becomes a layered process of diving down into that. And absolutely where that started was values in terms of ongoing qualities. So within acceptance and commitment therapy, which is a type of therapy, values have a very specific definition, which is a quality of ongoing action. So to be loving, to be kind. So it's the quality of the action that you bring in that moment. And then that was absolutely a starting point in going, well, okay, how do I want to be in this moment? How do I want to show up in this moment? And can I access that part of me whilst I move through the terrain? And so in that respect, values are absolutely a core part of how you choose to be, and letting that shine through depending on which role or cap you're wearing at the time. And then obviously that brings us also into the I am presence work, which is far more spoken about in the spiritual side of things. But anyway, I've been rattling on for a while.
No, that's great. I love it when you rattle on. So what then would be your core value set that you bring through all facets of your life and of yourself? So if you could name five values that you hold dear and that you come back to within everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So to put just another little piece of the story to that question, because it's such a fundamental one, throughout, and this will circle back around to our topic of what it is to be multifaceted in a mainstream society. So much of my training and jumping through the hoops, because it goes from bachelor to honours degree, then into masters, and you've got to essentially perform very well throughout the entire degree to secure the next part of your training. So excellence at that point had been deeply embedded in my psyche and securing outcomes. And then I went through burnout, and that weight of excellence, that value of excellence, was too much to carry at times. And so in those moments where I was like, I can't, that expectation to be excellent, or to have excellence flow through my work, felt like the grind. I did my top values, and at the top of my values was kindness. So kindness for me is a never-ending quality. It's something that is ever present. And so when our listeners are thinking about, well, what are my top values? What are my top qualities? Your top 3, if you think about it as a hierarchy, so ideally you want to have top 10, and on the bottom rung is 10, 9, 8, 7, so the bottom 4, and then that will scaffold to the next 3, 6, 5, 4, and then the top 3, so 2, 3, and 1, they will be your never-ending qualities that don't give out. So excellence, for example, may have been number 9, and that's a core trait. But there will be times where they falter, and so you need to be able to move up the hierarchy to go, okay, what's ever present for me? What's something that I don't have to think about in order to exist there? And so then when I chose to lead myself and my interactions with kindness, the excellence naturally follows, because essentially what kindness does is places me in the moment to be receptive. And whilst ever you're being receptive to what is rather than an idea of something, those parts of you are going to come to the fore. So that's really what I'm referring to in terms of who are you at a deeper level that lets that shine through in the moment to moment. And then we start getting into universal traits, universal qualities, because we are also governed and wired to take care of one another. So once you allow yourself to suspend those expectations, suspend the roles, and be, that's when all of you starts to generate as the moment requires, rather than an idea of the moment, which is when you're going to get in your head, when you're going to get caught up. And it's ultimately when you do a disservice to yourself. So coming back to those universal traits of being loving, kind, compassionate, harmonious, and then we probably get into that more second rung of grit, tenacity, your ability to problem solve, whether it's wisdom, excellence. And so then we get into those other layers of us that are required, but that's part of the pursuit of growth, the part that you actually execute to tap into that tenacity and grit when things aren't easy. But then it's in your ability to be that things are actually absorbed. So it's, for me, it's the dance between, I guess, from, again, a spiritual perspective, the more masculine traits of what is it that's going to let me execute and go out and conquer, so to speak. And then what are the more feminine traits of being, housing, nurturing, supporting, that lets things flourish. And it's your ability to dance between that and house all of that, that you again start to be, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And you get mastery over the different aspects of yourself in how you want to present whilst you wear whatever cap you're wearing.
That brings me to a question. So, what happens when people's values are in conflict with each other? So, I would consider that my top values are vulnerability, openness. I'd say that that's my top 2, which enables me to connect with people deeply, because they always know that how I'm presenting right now in this moment, there's nothing that I'm unwilling to put out there and show. The other thing that's really important to me is acceptance and forgiveness. So forgiving people and myself for where they're at. But I also, in my journey of life, I have found that vulnerability and openness and willingness to forgive leaves me very exposed to being hurt, feeling let down, those kinds of things, which kind of disables the things like lower on the ladder of the ability, the determination to keep going and being open and vulnerable, etc., having that the tenacity and all of those things. So what happens with that, and how can people can people adjust their value set to, can they change their value set as they go, I think is what my question is for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Thank you for that. So essentially what we look at is a values clash. So if I was to paraphrase, I would say that the value of vulnerability and openness clashes with the need of self-preservation and protection, and to
And boundaries.
yes, and boundaries.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So if we look at vulnerability, openness, and boundaries, and that feels like it's clashing, there's two things. One, we come back to a choice point, that each and every moment is a choice point, and I choose the value set that serves me at this particular moment, this particular choice point. And then also, in terms of it being an expansive exercise, we go, okay, how do I be open and vulnerable and maintain boundaries? Because often in a clash, there's a perception that it's got to be either or. I can either be open and vulnerable or put in place boundaries. And so then we ask the question, which is interject and in the middle. So it becomes a both thing, that I can be open and vulnerable and maintain my boundaries. And that looks like this, whilst I'm embodying openness and vulnerability. And then again, the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. However, the other part to that is it's the unconditional self-regard that learning and our mode of operation happens in cycles. And so one of the traps we can fall into is, how do I be everything at once? And that's not the nature of a cycle. So for us, for example, there will be times where we have that inner compulsion to go out, be open, be vulnerable, and share. And that's in service of community. And then you are present in that. And because everything is an interplay, you will be absorbing from your experience at the same time that you're giving out. And then the next part of that particular self cycle is the integration. And so that's when we allow the generous space and time, and it will seem that we're more introverted or more protected or more boundary setting, because now we're integrating everything that we've just experienced. And then that you move through a place of just safely housing that. And then you start to get bored again once that's safely housed and integrated. And then you start learning something new. And then you integrate that. And then you go out and share again. So everything happens in a cycle. And the particular value that you tap into or that governs you at that time will be reflective of the part of the cycle you're in.
Mm.
Mm. And so then it's just that self-awareness of going, what value serves me now? And in the really tough moments, that's when that I am work really comes into play, because it's going to be that, if you lead through that part of you, your core traits, the things that are ever present in you, that will be the most seamless way to move through difficult terrain. And it will be the most likely outcome that you look back and you go, wow, I'm really glad at how I navigated that. It's when we get caught and are reactive and that we're not centered, when the seas are stormy, that you're likely to get knocked overboard, and then you act in ways that aren't reflective of who you truly are.
Mm.
So if you're in a position, and to bring it back to this idea of being multifaceted in the mainstream, where that starts to get generated is when those deeper parts of you, the I am, because there's quite a famous quote, which is, I am are the two most powerful words you shall ever speak, for what comes after them shapes your reality. And it just eludes me for now who that is actually by, but it's circulated quite a lot. And so this comes back to when I am fully in my I am presence, because I have determined the quality of my reality that I want for myself, and then I purposefully embody that and lead with that example, that part of you, when you start to embrace that, that is when the old roles will kind of feel like old shoes that don't really fit, or old clothes that don't really fit, and there will become a rub where the old no longer really is serving you in the way that those deeper parts of you are calling to be seen and witnessed and utilized. And so then that's another expansion piece in going, I now open myself up and am willing to be seen for the purity of this in service of something that is seemingly calling me forward. And that's what it is to be multifaceted in the mainstream, when you allow that to be seen, in my perspective. So again, I've been rattling on for ages, and I know you'll have loads to contribute here. So what's being generated for you as we chat away?
Just my own experience of everything that you're talking about, like the I am presence, and how that has carried, and what that means for me, in how I've chosen to move through the last few years. And the I am presence reminds me of the soul statement work that I've done myself and I've done with clients. And my soul statement that carried me through a lot of the changes in myself was, I am divine expression. So that the reference to the divine and oneness, or whatever that, the universe, God, whatever that word is for you, the reference to divine, and then expression being my own expression of that. It doesn't matter if I'm creating an artwork, if I'm dancing, if I'm having a conversation with someone, if I'm whatever I'm doing at the time, that soul statement and that I am statement carried me through so many changes, because I knew that I was being holding the integrity of who I am at my core in everything that I was bringing into the world, moment to moment.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And you know, you always blow me away in the excellent points that you raise. And it was actually only this morning that I was listening to a podcast on quantum physics, and you know, that's a bit of a pet project of mine, or you know, a keen interest topic of mine, and
slight obsession. In a good way.
Yeah, in the fact that it brings about what you're exactly talking about, and that everything is interrelated, and where that science is now speaking and bringing to the fore is the fact that from that everything emerges. And so what's so beautiful about what you just said, in my perspective, is that divine expression that is living through you. That is from the quantum perspective, that's the quantum realm that you're existing in harmoniously, that those action potentials are then rising out of you and allowing you to be present in such an organic way, which is integrity with who you are and the vibration that you add, and what you've consciously created in each and every moment. And that's where things have a quality of life is happening for you, when you can be really in it and immersed in it and generating from that place. That is flow, and that's, you know, that's
and it's okay.
another piece.
I just want to highlight, it's okay when you're not operating from that point, that standpoint. When you have it as a reference. So I get knocked off kilter all the time, and I get knocked out of flow all the time, and I go back into old patterns of self-sabotage and not being divine expression. And that's okay, because I know that that's who I am at my core, and I know that's what I can come back to. And so the journey becomes finding my way back to that in every facet of myself. That makes sense.
That's so beautiful. Yes, thank you for that. And because and absolutely, where that is the human experience. You know, if we were forever always in flow and always operating from that perspective, we wouldn't learn the human experience. The human experience is the learning of getting off course and coming back on course, and integrating that into as much harmony as possible. But to have that as an expectation that we're always going to exist there, we're not learning anything. And then you also see arrogance that can come through with people who have heard these concepts, but then use them as a badge of honor or a deflection point for, if something happens, it becomes an umbrella of, oh, well, you know, that's the way of the world, or whatever. And it become very dismissive if these concepts aren't felt at their deeper level and in integrity and in an integrated way. So to me, what's highlighted there is to go, yes, we know these states, and not only do we know them, it's about feeling them and being in them, recognizing when we're off and coming back to them, because it's highly unlikely, and neurochemically, we're not designed to be in that state over and over, because everything happens in cycles. So having that reflection point of going, am I not? What's the journey back? That is, again, the cycle. So so
it's really normal. It's really normal to go down a certain path that you haven't been down before, to explore something that you really want to learn about yourself and the world and your expression in the world. Go into it 500%, and then the integration is bringing that back into and integrating it with all the other facets of yourself. It happens with people all the time, where you might feel like you just want to get away from your family, or you just want to move overseas and find out what else is out there. And then you get to the other side of the world and you realize that you really miss your family. But the integration comes in when you come back and you're able to bring back the things that you have learnt while you were away, and still be an integrated part of your family, and have them be an integrated part of you. So that's an example, just one example of how people, what do I want to experience? Oh, okay, that's really cool, but I've still got all these parts of me that I can't exist while I'm completely immersed in that. So I'm going to back out again and integrate it.
Yes, exactly. And one of the concepts that I speak about with people is the fact that we learn in the presence of and in the absence of. And so there will be times that you need to switch, but they're both the opposite ends of the poles, to go, what's important to me? I know it's important that when I'm in the presence of, I feel full, but then we come into those points, and it typically happens about every life chapter. So about every 7 years, you will come to a point of satiation where that is your now known, and often it does require an absence of, in some kind of way, whether that's travel, whether that's your own soul journey, whatever it is, whatever that next immersion point is. And it's then in the absence of that we're reminded what's really important to me and what stability we do need in our life. And then that becomes, again, the stabilizing point for the next round of evolution. So yes, it's absolutely, when we do deep dives into our own territory, that we find new aspects of ourselves. And it also provides the the window of opportunity to be reminded about what's deeply important to us that is an ever presence in our life. But we can't be like the fish in water. We can't be the fish in water that takes for granted that, oh yeah, I actually need this water to run by me in the gills and for the oxygen to survive. You know, it's a very, yeah. So it's the reflection point of what is ever presence, and being appreciative with gratitude for what is ever present whilst you do the deep dive within. And I find that a really fascinating balancing point, because it essentially comes back to the point of you don't miss the water until the well runs dry. So having the wisdom to appreciate what is ever present in your life whilst you go out and explore the new.
And I want to highlight that all of these life lessons and these exploring the new versions of yourself and the coming back to the core of you and what your values are, and all of those, the whole journey of life isn't an easy process. And I just want to acknowledge all of our listeners for getting up every day and existing as a human, because some of it is so excruciatingly painful, and yet we still get up and are willing to listen to podcasts and take the steps that allow us to grow and learn and evolve and get the most out of life. So here's hats off to everybody.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, in the interest of time, because I know we've already gone over, however, would you have any tips for our listeners in housing the experience of what it is to be multifaceted in a mainstream world?
It always comes back to self-love and taking time in stillness to allow the integrations to take place. So whatever self-love is for you, just make sure that you're doing it for at least half an hour every day. If it's walking slowly through the grass, if it's meditating, if it's taking a bath in Epsom salts, if it's getting a massage, whatever floats your boat, just make sure that you're doing it and you're not ignoring your own need for integration.
Yeah, beautiful.
What about you? What are your tips?
I think I would direct people to that fundamental question that I was asked that catalyzed a lot of this journey for me, which is, who am I without the title? And when you start playing with that question of who am I, it is at that deeper quality trait that everything starts to suspend. And then in that suspension, whilst you make space for everything, having that openness to experience new. And it's when we allow different parts of us to come to the fore in new environments that's those different facets shining their respective light. And why the openness to new experience is so important is because we learn who we are through others, through those new experiences. So when that part of you, that core part of you, is allowed to come out and play, so to speak, and the light reflects back to you who you are, whether it's through someone else's eyes or whether it's how that particular experience felt for you, and embracing the fact that newness will always feel every shade of new, which is sometimes it's awkward, sometimes it's terrifying. Sometimes it's exhilarating and all of it, and just simply opening up to allow for all of that and continuing to show up in those different ways so it can be reflected back to you, the entirety of who you are. That for me is a really pivotal point, and it all centers back to that fundamental question of who am I, and then the bravery to actually explore that. Cool.
Big topic.
Huge topic. Yeah. So it may impact
what I wanted to ask our listeners is if you're able to throw in the comments what you think your top 3 values are after listening to this. And I'd love to start a bit of a discussion about that and what that means for you, and, potentially making your own soul statement to lead you through the next chapters. I'd love to help with that.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, we will see you all next week. And anyone that is wanting to join us for VIP chats now, you can DM us and we can flick you through the link for that as well.
Cool.
See
Much
you next
love
week,
everyone. Bye.